Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm Keith Downey, your host, and today we're thrilled to have again with us Jordan Burke, a Catholic speaker, content creator, coordinator at the Avila Institute, and the driving force behind the social media ministry, Do the Harder Thing. Jordan, it's great to have you again on the show.
It is always a joy to be here, which is fitting because it's Morning Joy, but it's true. It's always a joy.
Also, it's also true. Like it's full of truth. Well, thanks again for joining us. And it seems like our society doesn't want us to discern too much nowadays. And time again, we see many tactics on using our emotions to dictate our emotions. Whether it's done in politics or even simply the news cycles. I mean, just recently, and I don't know if you've seen it on your end over there, but people going to Costco, Walmart, and literally buying up all the toilet paper and water bottles again. I don't know what's going on, but I think people are once again not really discerning what to do and reading these headlines and just panic buying. But now, obviously, we as Catholics probably shouldn't be following in this mindset. Right. Is there any Catholic principles that provide some sort of framework for discernment?
Yeah, one of the best, in my opinion, at least, or the one that's changed my life pretty significantly, is discernment of spirits, which is a practice from Ignatius of Loyola, where he there's two sets 1 through 14, which applies to 99% of the folks out there, maybe 90% of the folks out there. And then the second set of rules apply to those who've already kind of mastered the first set. I am not one of them. But they, excuse me, they add more to helping us discern pretty much anything that happens.
Okay. Is this something that someone could easily just pick up and start doing, or does it like you have to read a book, or what does that entail exactly?
Yeah. So there's a couple books on it. We actually produced a video series on it at Spiritual Direction, totally for free. If anyone wants it, it's spiritualdirection.com/warfare. And they'll walk you through all of it. But I would recommend going and looking up, if you just want to know what it is, Google Ignatian's Rules of Discernment, Rules 1 through 14, first set, and kind of read through it, and it will give you a general idea. But it's helpful if you have a book or if you watch that series. My dad wrote a book on it as well, which is why it's so like it's in our daily lives here. But that'll help you out a lot. So.
Oh, that's great. So because it's the month of the Rosary, can't help not bring up the Rosary. So what would you say the role with, like, say, praying the Rosary and meditation play in Catholic discernment? And what have you seen that generally helps?
Yeah, well, prayer, I mean, as you said, prayer, well, you alluded to it, prayer is extremely important in discernment. Not just the Rosary. The Rosary helps bring us peace. We're meditating on the Gospels. We're immersing ourselves in the Passion narrative, looking at it through Mary's eyes, which is such a profound gift that we've been given, or Jesus's life through Mary's eyes, but especially the Passion. I'm very fond of the Sorrowful Mysteries. But then regular prayer, and what I mean by regular prayer is generally Lectio Divina, or divine reading, where you are immersing yourself in the Gospels, specifically reading, generally like the Gospel of the day is what I tend to recommend to people. I think what most people recommend. And in the process of doing that, you are teaching yourself how to learn the voice of God. And that is the fundamental key prior to entering into discernment of spirits, because discernment of spirits is deciphering between the voice of the God and the voice of the enemy. And even in a lot of ways, our own internal voice, there's concupiscence and things like that as well. But you can't kind of navigate those waters if you don't have that first foundation of what is God saying, what does he teach, and what does he sound like. Once you figure that out, it makes discernment of spirits not totally easy, but much, much easier.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking, it can be especially challenging, like you said, like your own internal voice, especially when there's so many things that are trying to get our attention, like, hey, the new iPhone. And so you're like, oh, well, let me look at the specs for this. And you just you spend all this time like thinking, oh, I can't wait to get this new phone, when it's like, well, do we really need it? Probably not. Right. So maybe not that particular example, but if there's, balancing personal desires when making decisions, should we just completely avoid those types of desires, or should we recognize them and just move forward? Or what are your thoughts on that?
recognize and pray a lot of the time, giving it back to God, because the important thing is that I think too many people think that we treat emotions and desires as if they are something to be kind of thrown away. Like, we're not pure stoic robot stoics. God gave us feelings and emotions for a reason, and they're generally indicators of something else that's going on. And the way that I try to explain it is, your emotions are not the GPS on your car. If you're driving a car, they're not the GPS. They could be the dashboard. You can have a check engine light pop on, and there's something that's going on that I need to be aware of. Maybe it's an oil change. Maybe something more serious is happening. That's the role that emotions serve. So they indicate to us something much deeper that's happening. So if we, I don't know, we'll try to make the iPhone one work. Like, oh, I have this desire for this new thing. Why do I have this desire? Well, it may just be because I really like gadgets and I want a cool new gadget. Or maybe it's because I'm trying to fulfill my life with things when, as we know, our heart, what is it? Our heart is, I see, this is what happens when you hop on early.
What was that, Tim?
Our heart is restless until it rests in thee.
Thank you. Oh, you just saved me. Yeah, there you go. So that may be what it is, right? And maybe we're trying to fulfill our lives with something when we really should be fulfilling it with God. So taking these indications and analyzing them and praying with them and asking God, okay, why do I feel this way? What's going on? And then moving forward.
I love that metaphor about the car and the GPS. Reminds me of that dash, that light that's popping up. Got to take it to the mechanic, which could be, the priest, especially going to the sacrament of confession. So is there any way that we can differentiate between genuine feelings and emotional impulses at all? I feel like I have a trouble doing that myself.
Yeah, well, you and everyone else in the world, me included. it's if you have a pulse, it's difficult. Yeah, this is, again, not to hammer this too much, but this is why prayer is so important. And then I would also say spending time in silence, because when you start to remove the noise from your life and you actually analyze what's going on internally, you have a better read on these things. And you can say, okay, this is just a fleeting thing, or I feel like I was slighted, and I feel, you start to recognize why these indicators are popping up. The emotions should always be, passions, desires should always be subject to the intellect and will. And the intellect and will should be pointing to the ultimate, capital T truth, God. So that, prayer and silence, figuring out what's going on in our own heads, and then, we can kind of decipher things from there.
Yeah, you make a really good point. Silence. We don't have enough silence in our day, especially, when we are literally living with technology. And that's a great strategy. I think I'd call it a strategy, is to be in silence, especially during emotionally charged times like election season.
Yeah, well, and I'll tell you, I've been going through some pretty severe desolation recently, and I realize it's because I'm scrolling through social media. I don't tend to scroll. I do post and ghost, right? I post and then I leave. But I've been scrolling and I'm seeing all these terrible things, and it is a cause of desolation. And thankfully, I was like, okay, why do I feel this way? Why do I feel so bad? Why do I feel like the world is falling apart? Which in a way it is, right? But God's in control. But it's easy to lose sight of that when all I see is these things, and I have a right emotional reaction to them, right? It's recognizing injustice, recognizing sadness, seeing the damage that's going on in the Carolinas right now is so heartbreaking. But what is my response? Am I going to spiral in that desolation and, think that everything is terrible? Definitely struggle with that this week. Yeah. But having that recognition and good friends, thank God, who said, hey, dude, wake up. God is good. Don't let this take you out of peace. And then correcting that path and saying, all right, no more scrolling. I don't scroll for a reason. Let's go do something productive. Let's go give our lives to God in some way, even if it's something small.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah. Because you can certainly get lost in the feed, like you said. And there's a lot of things that we see on there that are completely out of our hands. Like, why isn't the government doing this? This is crazy, blah, blah, blah. And that destroys our peace. Whereas
that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, no, I was just doing that earlier this morning before the show. And I'm just like, okay, I got to stop this. I know I have to be somewhat aware of the current events, but this is just too much.
Right.
Is there any advice you could give maybe some listeners out there who might be struggling with just this kind of this emotional decision making discernment?
I really think the more silence that you can get into your life, again, paired with the prayer, but I would start with the silence in this case, only because we are inundated with so much noise that it becomes almost impossible to determine even our own emotions. You know, when we're constantly feeling our head, like you wake up, you turn on a podcast, you go to sleep, you turn on, or you're watching YouTube videos, whatever it is, we're not taking time to really look at where we're at and question our own, movements that are going on. Because there's so much stuff online that's just totally fake. It's just fake, but it's designed to be emotionally manipulative. And so if we don't take time in the silence to really analyze our own thoughts, not every thought in your head is your own and you shouldn't listen. It's like one of my favorite quotes. Then we're at the mercy of whatever is being thrown at us. And if we're just relying on emotions, we're going to respond in those emotions, and then we're just going to continue down the spiral. So I would say silence, prayer 100% always, that should go without saying. But in this case, I think I would put a heavy emphasis on silence.
Oh, great set of advice. And I was just thinking of engagement farming or engagement bait, even like on the text-based social medias.
Yes.
Where it's like they say something, do Christians believe in this? And like immediately my like emotions flare up and I'm like about to jump in and just lay it into them. And I realize, wait a second, I know what they're doing. I'm just going to pray for these individuals. I'm not going to give into this whole thing.
Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much, Jordan, for joining us. So remind us the place where we can view that video, Avila Institute.
spiritualdirection.com/warfare.
Okay, awesome. And then we can certainly find you on social media at Do the Harder Thing. Just don't expect him to respond because he posts and ghosts. I'm just kidding. But thank you so much, Jordan. We appreciate you.
Yeah.